Is the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo clinging to power? Judges are allowing Joseph Kabila to remain president after he was supposed to step down. The decisions provoked a national strike. So is this vast country at the heart of Africa sliding into crisis? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Martine Dennis. Now, Kinshasa is normally one of Africa's busiest, most bustling, even chaotic cities. But on the streets of the Democratic Republic of Congo's capital, barely anything moved on Wednesday. Shops closed, public transport ground to a halt. A nationwide strike was called for by the country's main opposition group following the announcement that presidential elections will be deferred until April 2018 instead of being held next month when they were due. Now, critics of President Joseph Kabila say he's using the delay to extend his 15-year-long rule and in so doing violating the constitution. But President Kabila's government has claimed that this election must be postponed so they can properly prepare. We'll get to our guests in just a moment, but first, Catherine Soy reports from Kinshasa.
This is usually a very busy intersection in Kinshasa. We've also seen that many shops have been closed. A lot of people have stayed away from town. Very few vehicles on the road. And those who've visited Kinshasa know that the weekday traffic can be a nightmare. A lot of children have not gone to school. Some people have stayed away because they've heeded the calls by the opposition to do so. Others are just afraid to come out because, previous times there have been protests that turned violent, with many people being killed in confrontation with the security forces. Those who are out and about, like this young man, told us they're frustrated.
The situation is not good. We have no customers. We are not working. We have just come to assess what is going on.
We're not happy with the president. We have no jobs. We don't have money. It is only people in politics who are living well. Their children have jobs.
While it remains quiet in Kinshasa, there have been some protests in some parts of the country, particularly in the east. In Goma, the capital of North Kivu, people there are unhappy about this resolution that was made after a dialogue between the ruling party and some opposition parties. They resolved that the president can stay on to power until 2018, when a presidential election is expected. Now, the main opposition here boycotted those talks and has rejected that as a resolution, saying that it's unacceptable and unconstitutional. And they say the only condition has to be President Joseph Kabila stepping down when his mandate expires in December.
Well, the Democratic Republic of Congo is a huge country. It's more than half the size of the entire continent of Europe, and it takes up a large portion of Central Africa. It has 9 neighbouring countries, many of whom have taken part in the Congolese Civil War. The conflict has often been called Africa's World War. It began in the 1990s, killed 6 million people, and the fighting goes on mainly in the east of the country. Now, 20,000 peacekeepers are still stationed in the largest UN operation worldwide. Security issues are coupled with political instability. Mobutu Sese Seko ruled for 3 decades before he was finally overthrown and sent into exile. And the man who ousted him, Laurent Kabila, declared himself president until he himself was assassinated. That was in 2001. And that's when his son, Joseph Kabila, became president. His opponents accuse him of trying to cling to power like those before him. Right, let's bring in our guests. In Kinshasa, we have Claude Mashala. He's the National Executive Secretary of the ruling People's Party for Reconstruction and Democracy. In London, we have Theo Ngombo. He's the UK representative for the opposition party known as the Union for Democracy and Social Progress. And in Geneva, we have Scott Campbell. He's Africa Section Chief for the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human rights. Mr. Mashala, can I start with you? We have an election date now. We have a transitional government that is to be put in place. But what we don't know, what is still missing, is what President Kabila's intentions are. Does President Kabila intend to stand in next April's elections?
Okay, thank you for the questions. I think that during the dialogue, which was finished yesterday, we talked about that transitional government, that election to become. And we think that all the rules has fallen in place. And actually, that doesn't matter to talk as those who are willing to show, to keep that bad image of our democracy around the world, to talk about any other mandate to come for President Kabila. But it's for us as politicians, as Kabila followers, it's normal for those who conquer the power to fight for, to keep it for a long time. It's normal. I think that the point to put out here is the fact that all those are willing to take Kabila place, they are willing to show, to justify even all those plots by even willing to learn in the Kabila mind.
Forgive me for interrupting, but the question is quite simple. What is President Kabila intending to do? Is he intending to stand in the next elections? It's simple, yes or no?
I think that the Constitution is very clear. Why are you asking this question again?
The Constitution gives a two-term limit.
You can read. You can read the Constitution.
Indeed. It gives a two-term limit.
That is why, because of... no, you know, I think that during the dialogue, the independent national election commissions show that technically it is impossible to organize the election in December or by November. It was impossible. And that is why this dialogue has been organized, just to see the way of reaching a point which could permit the well organization of the incoming election, which allow the country to stay in peace. That is the point.
All right. Let me go to Theo.
Ask him today if President Kabila will stand up, will stand down. It's a nonsense, because the Constitution is clear.
Okay, let's go to Theo Ngombo of the opposition, the main opposition. Now, we've heard reference to the national dialogue. This is the outcome of a process of a dialogue which involved the government, it involves some of the opposition, it involved the African Union, the EU, the UN, even SADC was involved. You've missed your opportunity, haven't you, by staying out of these talks?
For the opposition, the true opposition in the Democratic Republic of Congo, what happened in that monologue is a non-event, because we are still waiting for them to come up, and we need an inclusive dialogue. It's a shame to see that the biggest country, one of the biggest countries in Africa, is governed by people who think that they are in Hollywood. They feel free to kill their own people, so they can sit down and violate the Constitution.
But why didn't you take part? But why didn't you take part in this dialogue so that you could have some input into the outcome? Now you've got an outcome. Surely you've just got to accept it and prepare for the next election.
We don't accept the outcome because it was well known before. Even the European Union asked Mr. Kabila to come up properly and to say that he will not seek another mandate. The problem is now they want to play with the constitution, which is very clear that they don't. They put, Mr. Kabila put the country in a special condition where the election cannot be organized. So we should point the responsibility of non-organization of the election to Mr. Kabila. And then let us talk about non-organization of election. There is not a single article in the Constitution which is talking about a country not able to organize the election. Now we are facing with this reality. Mr. Kabila has to step down by the 20th of December, so we have to call a special regime which will govern the country during that period. So what is happening, or what's happened with this monologue, doesn't engage all the Congolese people, because you can see it from today. We called the people to stay home, to strike, to stay home, and your report said it clearly that there is no people in the city. So those people who are pretending, talking about the population, they are not representing the population. They do represent their own pocket. They are there just to keep Mr. Kabila in power. They are maneuvering for them to change the constitution so the guy can stay like Mobutu.
Let's go to Scott Campbell in Geneva. From the Office of the UN Human Rights Commissioner, how does Democratic Republic of Congo look to you today?
Well, we're very concerned by the recent developments, and we've taken good note of the signing of the agreement. But at the same time, we're hoping very much that there will now be a new process that begins, a process that's more inclusive, that brings in most of the opposition, which did not take part in the signing of the agreement yesterday. A process that is also one that builds confidence from the population, from the political opposition, from the religious leaders, insofar that an environment does not consist of people being arrested for exercising their right to peaceful protest. People have space to express themselves. Journalists are not arbitrarily arrested. Civil society leaders are not intimidated. We think it's very important that there's an environment conducive to a truly inclusive dialogue
so you don't
that can map out the way forward.
Sorry to interrupt. So you obviously don't believe that this outcome from this process of national dialogue has delivered that. You don't believe that it's actually taken DRC to another more open political space?
Well, I think it's quite clear. The reaction from the majority of the opposition, reactions, the ville morte, the dead city declared today and largely observed in Kinshasa, speaks for itself. So this is cause for concern. And of note, we've seen in the past, going back to elections 5 years ago, when people's voices are not heard, when there's not a peaceful space in which people can express themselves, participate in dialogue, have their opinions heard, they will take to the streets, and unfortunately protest has often been met in the past by an excessive use of force, which many times has been lethal.
And coming back to you then, Mr. Mashala in Kinshasa, so what we've heard is that the opposition claimed to represent about 70% of the population of DRC. We've had the Catholic Bishops' Conference who suspended their cooperation with the dialogue. They weren't happy with it. So exactly who do you represent right now in DRC?
Thank you very much. I think that, first of all, I would like just to address my speech to Mr. Scott Campbell. You know, that guy has been declared in our country as a persona non grata. And I can
why
feel
is that? Why have you banned him? Why have you banned him from the country?
Yeah, you know, why? Because that guy was part of this large plot against our sovereignty, against our dignity, even against our president. You know, just ask to Mr. Scott Campbell why today the guy will replace him. Why is he cooperating so well with the government? That means that once we discover that Scott Campbell was in the country not about what he's supposed to do as a job, but for something else.
Let's move away from.
To reply to your question.
My question was...
My question,
question...
let me tell you something.
Yes, of course, because the opposition claimed...
I understand the question. Let me reply.
Okay, all right. Please, go ahead.
You know, when people are talking about inclusivity, but inclusivity doesn't mean unanimity. We are talking about democracy. Democracy is about the majority. And we think that, and this has been considered by everybody, that this dialogue involving all political tendencies with DRC. And even when you are talking about that bishop, you know, today Congo is a laic country. It's not a Catholic country. Even talking about this bishop, let me tell him something. He must understand that today, during this dialogue, ourselves we contested that there was more Catholics than everybody. And this bishop was just a member of a civilian society.
So why are so many people... many people heeding the call of the opposition to have a nationwide strike? Kinshasa is like a ghost town today. Why are so many people on strike?
You know why? There is no strike in Kinshasa. You know, people are just a little bit scared about just remind yourself that what's happened this last 20 September. We saw those hooligans and typhoses belonging to Mr. Tshisekedi in the street. And looting, killing.
Yes, and about 100 people were
buildings,
killed.
You know,
by the security forces. Is that not heavy-handed policing?
Because with whom? Because with whom? You know, today Mr. Tshisekedi is out of fashion. If there is a place for that guy is in the country, I think that this place is in jail. You know, and why we have to keep that sacralization syndrome in our country? Because he's old, we can allow him to do what he wants to do, and where he's finding so many immunities, even against the law. I suppose that the problem in our country is the constitution and is Mr. Tshisekedi. And if we can put ourselves together really and sort out the constitutional problem and the Mr. Tshisekedi problem, I can tell you that the DRC Congo gonna be the right place to be, you know. And
all right, let me take that point and put it to let me take that point, Mr. Mashala, and put that to Mr. Ngombo in London. So, according to Mr. Mashala, all of this turmoil that's being experienced in DRC is the result of the interventions of Mr. Tshisekedi, of course, who is the leader of your party, a veteran opposition leader, and the man who many people think could become president.
First of all, we can't turn or reduce a problem in the country for a single person. It's a wrong judgment of those people who are clinging into power just for the purpose of killing their own people. Those people, ahead of them, we have got Mr. Kabila, who doesn't respect the Constitution. Everyone has to respect the Constitution. They have been in power for so long. Since 2011, they didn't give the money to the National Electoral Commission, independent as they call it. They didn't give them the money. What's the problem of Mr. Tshisekedi on that one? Mr. Tshisekedi is just telling the people to look after the Constitution, so no one can be above the Constitution. But with regret, we are seeing that people who has got weapons, so they are going around to kill. That's why we are calling the international community and those countries who sell the weapon to those terrorists. If we can talk about Daesh killing people, what about Mr. Kabila who's killing his own people?
Okay, all right. Let me ask Scott Campbell a question in Geneva. Scott, all of the actions being taken by Joseph Kabila and his government have been sanctioned, have been condoned by the Constitutional Court. Do you have any concerns then about the independence of the judiciary?
Well, we do. The United Nations has expressed its concern in a number of public reports over the last years regarding the lack of independence of the judiciary in the DRC. And unfortunately, we've seen on many occasions either senior military officers or members of the executive interfering in the judiciary, imposing their views, threatening judges to produce certain outcomes. And this unfortunately has contributed to a cycle of impunity that is really at the heart of many of the problems and the ongoing cycles of human rights violations in the DRC today.
Mr. Mashala in Kinshasa, can I come back to this central issue? I can't let it go because I haven't really heard a definitive answer from you, because the intention of President Kabila to stand or not to stand in the next election is crucial. What is your understanding of what his intention is? The Constitution allows for 2 terms. The 2-term limit comes up on the 19th or the 20th of December, depending on how you look at it, this year. What will he do?
I think that we are coming out of a dialogue, and we have signed an agreement which fixing the next play rules politically. I think that asking me that those kind of question means that you're still having in mind this old way of African country used to be governed. But let's talk about constitution. I think that there is a declaration. I think that the 1993 July declaration on the human and citizen rights is saying clearly, I think that it's the 28th article, is saying that revisiting or modifying or changing a constitution is a right which recognized to all the people. But if this not interest President Kabila, this means that is really decide to respect the constitution. But the reality here, I think that just help us by stopping those are willing to play with people emotions. The reality is here, the Independent National Electoral Committee has a problem of organizing election this year.
All right, okay.
It's not about Mr. Kabila, because
well, it is. It is actually.
Electoral community
it's very much about President Kabila.
But actually, is a show that you only to show around the world that if election doesn't take place this year, is because of Mr. Kabila. No, it's because of a lack of means. If by means I say logistically, financially, and so on.
Let me take the assurances that you're giving and put them to the opposition. And Mr. Ngomo. So Mr. Mashala, representing the party of President Kabila, assures you that the Constitution is going to be lived up to and that they're not intending to play with it at all. There are no violations of the Constitution whatsoever. What do you say to that?
The Constitution was violated by the 19th of September. The election body was not, process was not called. And we are sure that on the 19th of December, there won't be anyone elected as a new president to take over from Mr. Kabila. Mr. Kabila has put the country in a special case where he said that it's impossible to organize the election. That means he has to step down even before the 19th of December.
All right, very quickly.
Then we have to call a special body.
Very quickly,
to organize the election.
Mr. Ngombo, very, very quickly, what will you do if he doesn't step down on the 19th of December?
We'll force him to leave the power. We put our life on the line to be killed by Mr. Kabila machine, for the world to sit down and see that the Congolese people are being slaughtered because they are out crying for their right, they are out crying for the democracy, they are out asking Mr. Kabila to leave the power.
All right,
don't have
Mr.
any
Ngombo,
weapon. We will do it peacefully. Asking the world to take notice.
I have to end it there. Thank you all very much indeed. Claude Mashala, Theo Ngombo and Scott Campbell, thank you. And as ever, thank you for watching the programme. You can see it again anytime you like by going to the website, aljazeera.com. For more discussion, you can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or you can join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Martine Dennis, and the whole team here in Doha, it's bye for now.